Listen to the sound of a rifle that does not stop. A trigger press, a shot, and then, without hands leaving the stock or the sights, another shot and another. No reach for a bolt, no break in rhythm. On a jungle trail or a ridge of coral, that rhythm is everything. It decides who keeps moving and who must freeze. It decides who dares to cross 10 yards of open ground and who hugs the dirt. In the Pacific, American riflemen carried a weapon that kept that rhythm. Their opponents, brave, disciplined, relentless, often did not. So here is the question we will answer in this first chapter. How did the United States get a true semi-automatic battle rifle into ordinary hands before the war hit full speed? And why did that single decision shape so many small fights that added up to a larger result? Start with the thing itself. The American rifleman lifts an M1 Garand. It feeds from a compact 8-round clip. It is gas-operated, which means the rifle uses a little of each shot's energy to cycle itself. The shooter keeps cheek on stock, eyes through a clean peep sight, and the next round waits in the chamber before the recoil is even finished. The feeling is simple. Point, press, correct, press again. You do not give up your sight picture. You do not click open a bolt, drag it back, and push it forward again. You do not juggle your focus under stress. The M1 lets you stay on the problem. Across the line, a Japanese infantryman shoulders an Arisaka. It is a strong, reliable bolt-action rifle that loads 5 rounds into an internal magazine with a simple stripper clip. Many carried the long Type 38 in 6.5 mm. Later in the war, more and more men received the shorter, heavier Type 99 in 7.7 mm. The sights are rugged. Early Type 99s even add clever ideas, like fold-out bars meant to help a shooter lead a moving aircraft, a dust cover to keep grit out of the action, and a chrome-lined bore to fight rust in harsh climates. The steel is good, the wood is honest. The rifle will not fail easily. But it is still a bolt action. Between every shot, the shooter must lift, pull, push, and lock. In peace, on a range, a skilled man can do this very fast. In war, when your heart is loud in your ears, when the target is also shooting back, those movements cost time and sight picture, and time is the currency of close combat. How did the United States arrive at a different answer before so many others? The road begins years before Pearl Harbor. After the First World War, American ordnance officers and designers chased a goal that had tempted armies since the turn of the century: a reliable, lightweight, self-loading rifle for ordinary soldiers. Prototypes came and went. Calibers were debated. In the early 1930s, there was serious interest in a smaller cartridge for control and lighter ammunition loads. In the end, leaders chose to keep the familiar .30-06 round, powerful, available, and already made in quantity. The winning design around it was a self-loader that kept weight reasonable and toughness high. In 1936, the United States standardized it as the U.S. rifle, caliber .30, M1. Even then, it was not magic on day one. The very first production rifles took gas from a sleeve at the muzzle and proved finicky. The fix was a more direct gas port system that made the rifle simpler and more dependable. Once that change came in, the path cleared. The government armory at Springfield built them. Winchester built them. Later, other factories and contractors would join. The point is not just engineering, it is scale. A good idea means little if you cannot make enough of it and train men to use it. By the time America was fighting across 2 oceans, the M1 was not a special weapon for elite troops. It was the normal rifle. That mattered more than any single statistic. Back to the Arisaka family for a fair look. The Type 38 in 6.5 mm is long and mild in recoil. The cartridge is gentle to shoot, which helps new soldiers learn without flinching. The action is strong, and the rifle can take abuse. The later Type 99 in 7.7 mm brings more punch. For a while, factories even add features that show careful thought. A monopod for stability in the prone, the dust cover we already mentioned, those fold-out lead bars on the rear sight, and that chrome-lined bore to fight the salt air and jungle. But as the war drags on, corners must be cut. Late war examples lose the polish and extras. Stocks turn rough. Metal shows tool marks. Underneath, the heart of the rifle is the same. A dependable bolt action with 5 rounds on tap. In a world of ambushes, night moves, and sudden violence at 20 yards, that ceiling on rate of fire is a hard limit that courage alone cannot erase. Now picture the 2 rifles in the same minute of battle. You step into a clearing ringed with scrub and roots. An enemy shape moves at the edge of your sight. With a semi-automatic, your first shot goes a hair high. You settle, correct, and your second shot is already in the air. Then a third. The rifle cycles itself. Your eye never leaves the target. With a bolt action, your first shot goes a hair high. You reach up with your firing hand, lift the bolt, pull back, push forward, and lock. In those seconds, the shape may drop, dash, or return fire. You rebuild your aim under pressure. If you are excellent, your second shot is still fast. If you are ordinary, and most soldiers are ordinary until experience makes them better, it takes longer. Multiply this tiny difference by squads, by platoons, by the number of times men have to peek from a corner or rush a doorway, and the balance tips. Semi-automatic fire also helps with another simple truth. People do not always hit the center of a human outline with their first shot. When adrenaline is high and targets can vanish in a heartbeat, the chance to send a clean follow-up before the moment is gone turns misses into hits and single hits into stops. The M1's peep sights matter here too. They are quick to read and repeat. A small twist sets windage. A clear notch sets elevation. You raise the rifle, the circle frames the front post, and your brain does the rest. The Arisaka's open sights are serviceable and tough, but the peep gives a speed advantage in finding and holding the same point under stress. All of this would matter less if only a few Americans carried semi-autos. But the decision to standardize early meant that entire infantry platoons could bring this rhythm into every fight. A squad with many M1s could pour out a wall of accurate, aimed fire that pinned opponents without wasting ammunition. It is not spray, it is not panic. It is steady pressure that lets one fire team hold a line while another moves, or lets a company cross the last 20 yards to a seawall under its own covering fire. Tactics rise to match the tool. When the base rifle is fast and accurate shot to shot, the whole group can plan to use that tempo. Short rushes, quick bounds, sharp corrections, because they trust that the volume will be there the instant they need it. None of this should be read as disrespect for Japanese infantry. Their training was harsh, their discipline was real, their doctrine prized movement at night, infiltration through cover, and sudden violent shock. Their light machine guns, when fed and in position, could be terrifying. But in the bright chaos of a surprise meeting engagement, where small units bump into each other and seconds count, the edge often fell to the side that could put more aimed bullets into space in the first 10 seconds. That is what a standard semi-auto gives you. Not more bravery, but more time. You buy back the seconds that a bolt action demands between shots, and you spend those seconds on control, on keeping your sight picture and finishing the problem. Pull the camera back to the factories for a moment. The American advantage did not come from a single genius in a workshop. It came from a whole system that could make the decision early, fix the flaws fast, build the rifle in large numbers, ship it with enough ammunition and spare parts, and train men to handle it with care instead of fear. The gas system change we mentioned earlier, the move from the early muzzle arrangement to the later, sturdier gas port, was not a footnote. It was a sign that the design would bend without breaking, that the country would commit to getting it right, and that the rifle would still work after months of rain, mud, and salt. If you have ever shot both kinds of rifles, the classic bolt action and a good semi-automatic, you already know how this feels. With the bolt action, you learn a rhythm of lift, pull, push, lock. You learn to roll the rifle in your shoulder just enough to clear your hand and keep your cheek welled. You can get quick with practice, but with the semi-automatic, you learn a different rhythm, press and correct. Your focus is free to live on the front sight and the target. Your hands do less, so your eyes do more. In war, where attention is the most precious tool you carry, that is worth more than any clever feature on a rear sight. So when we say semi-auto advantage, we mean this. The United States beat the clock. It took the risk to field a new kind of standard rifle before being forced to by a crisis. It solved early problems, and then it scaled production, so the advantage was not a theory, but a fact in every rifle company. The Japanese soldier's Arisaka was tough, honest steel, and it served its men with the virtues of simplicity and strength. But it asked for motions and seconds that the M1 did not. And in the real world of palm groves, swampy draws, and shattered villages, those motions and seconds often decided whether a squad moved forward or stalled, whether an enemy got back up or stayed down. This, then, is the heart of Part 1. The M1 Garand did not win by magic. It won by tempo, by cutting the time between the first shot and the next clean one, and by letting ordinary soldiers keep their eyes and minds on the fight instead of on the mechanism in their hands. In the next chapter, we will test that claim against hard ground, numbers, doctrine, and the messy truth of combat. We will look at real fights, from the first months on Guadalcanal to the brutal yards of Saipan and Iwo Jima, and we will ask, when bullets start to trade at close range, how much does that saved second really buy? Stay with us. The answer is waiting in the details. Listen for a moment to the space between two shots. In that tiny slice of time, barely the length of a breath, fights are won or lost. If you can send a second, accurate round before your opponent has worked a bolt and rebuilt his aim, you own that small slice. And if every rifleman beside you can do the same, a dozen small slices stack into a wall of pressure that pushes an enemy back. Here's our driving question for part 2. When people say one side was outgunned, what does that really mean on the ground? By the numbers, in the playbook, and in the real Pacific battles where seconds felt like miles. Start with the numbers that decide fights. In training, an American with an M1 Garand can put fast strings on target, dozens of aimed shots in a minute when the course calls for it. In combat, nobody keeps a range pace, but the pattern holds. The rifle cycles itself. The cheek stays on the stock. The eye never leaves the peep sight, and a clean follow-up is there before adrenaline steals the moment. Across the line, a Japanese rifleman with an Arisaka works a tough, honest bolt. On a calm day with a clear bench, a skilled shooter can run it quickly. In the smoke and shock of a real fight, the hand leaves the trigger, the head lifts a hair, the bolt lifts and runs back and forward, and the sight picture has to be found again. That motion costs seconds. Seconds cost opportunities. Ballistics tell a second part of the story. The M1 throws a light, fast 30 caliber projectile that flies flat and hits hard across the typical ranges of island war, jungle lanes, broken coral, terraces of ash. The later Type 99 Arisaka fires a heavier 7.7mm bullet with roughly similar reach and punch inside most battlefield distances. On paper, you could argue all day about foot-pounds and trajectories. In practice, at the ranges where squads bump into each other, both rounds are lethal. The decisive edge is not mystical stopping power. It is how quickly a shooter can place that first hit, and if he misses, how quickly he can place the second. Sights shape that speed. The Garand's aperture is a small circle that naturally centers the front post. The brain loves circles. The sight is easy to read and quick to repeat, with fine clicks for windage and elevation when there's time to set them. The Arisaka's open tangent sight is rugged and serviceable. Early Type 99s even carry folding lead arms to help a man aim at aircraft. Clever engineering for a rare chance. But for the job infantry do most, snap to a target, hold, and deliver, the peep is simply faster and more forgiving under stress. Add this to the semi-auto cycle, and you see why, in the most common kind of contact, the American rifle section could bend time in its favor. Before we move to doctrine and case studies, let's address the famous sound. The Garand spent clip flicking free with a bright ping. A lot of stories live here. The idea that an enemy, hearing that note, would leap up and charge a man reloading. In the quiet of a range, you can hear it from a few steps away. In the dirt of a firefight, rifles cracking, machine guns muttering, grenades ringing your skull. One small ring is lost in the storm. Veterans who carried the rifle tend to remember the ping as an internal cue. I'm empty, reload now. Could a close enemy catch the sound and gamble? Perhaps in rare, tight corners. Was it a battlefield code that turned American reloads into death traps? No. The myths are louder than the metal. Doctrine is where those seconds and sights are turned into a plan. The American squad, Army and Marine, with variations over the years, built its everyday fight around accurate volume from ordinary riflemen. If your baseline rifle is a quick, semi-automatic tool, you don't hoard it for an elite. You give it to everyone and expect everyone to carry some of the fire. The Browning automatic rifle sits in the group to punch holes and anchor a position. The light mortars, the machine guns, and the company weapons backstop the hard problems. But the first wall your opponent hits is the combined cadence of many M1s, all capable of a fast second shot. That's what makes bounding, one fire team moving while the other holds, feel possible. It's what makes a squad leader confident that a 3-second dash between two rocks will be covered by more than hope. Japanese doctrine, shaped by different terrain, resources, and tradition, leans harder on the light machine gun as the squad's beating heart. Riflemen are brave and relentless, but their 5-round bolt actions are not meant to flood space. Instead, training prizes stealth, night movement, infiltration, and sudden shock, maneuvers that break an opponent's plan before volume matters. These methods are dangerous, and they work when surprise holds. But in bright, chaotic daylight meeting engagements, those accidental collisions of small units on trails, ridges, and village edges, the side that can throw more aimed bullets into the first 10 seconds often gains a grip that is hard to pry loose. A light machine gun can answer that, if it is in place, fed, and firing. If it isn't, the rifle line has to carry the first minute. In that first minute, the semi-auto advantage is a quiet thief of time. Now, walk the ground. On Guadalcanal, in late 1942, Marines first fought with the old Springfields, while Army reinforcements brought the new M1s into the line. You can see the mix in photos and read it in diaries. Some platoons still worked bolts, others learned quickly what the Garand's rhythm felt like. The island itself taught hard lessons: jungle corridors that hit a dozen men at 20 paces, sudden shots at dusk, the need to fire, correct, fire again before the chance vanished. It is not that the Garand made one soldier braver than another. It made his best shot arrive sooner, and then it let him deliver another best shot a heartbeat later. Tarawa, November 1943. The coral reef holds back many of the Higgins boats. Men wade hundreds of yards under machine gun torrents. When they reach the seawall, shattered logs, broken wire, bodies in the shallows, the fight becomes a series of desperate sprints and point-blank exchanges. Here, the ability to keep the sight picture through recoil, to press again without losing the window, is priceless. A doorway coughs fire, a Marine presses and corrects, a second shot lands before the third breath. Multiply that action by a squad fanning along a wall, and you get the pattern veterans describe: short, brutal bursts where semi-auto control buys back moments that panic would otherwise steal. Saipan, June 1944. The broken sugarcane, the low stone walls, the caves cut into the hills. This terrain punishes hesitation. Japanese machine guns and mortars chew at every open space. American squads move in bounds, one element holding while the other slips forward a few yards at a time. Watch the holders in your mind's eye. Rifles up, peep steady, short corrections. The enemy sprints between cover. Several M1s answer almost at once. No bolt work interrupts the rhythm. If a first round goes wide, the second lands before the target has fully dipped. This is the honest meaning of outgunned. Not that one cartridge has magic power, but that one side can shape the first exchanges faster, more often, and with less waste. Iwo Jima, February 1945. Black volcanic sand swallows boots. Caves and tunnels bleed fire from unseen angles. Here, distance shrinks to cruel intimacy. A figure flickers at the lip of a cave. The first shot snaps him back. The second makes sure. The third covers the man with the satchel charge. In another corner of the same ridge, an Arisaka barks. Its owner must lift and run the bolt while the target changes shape. None of this belittles the courage on either side. It simply marks the mechanical reality that repeats endlessly across the island. After-action reports and personal accounts from these islands often circle the same idea, even when the writers don't use the same words. Tempo. American small arms fire felt continuous, pressing, fast, because so many rifles could deliver aimed pairs and triples without pause. Japanese accounts, when they describe meeting this kind of fire outside the shelter of a prepared position or a machine gun nest, talk about being pinned by thick or dense shooting. When the light machine guns were in place and fed, they could answer. When they weren't, when a patrol stumbled into a prepared American line, the first half minute was a steep hill to climb. Let's return, briefly, to the micro level, to the single exchange that happens all day long. A patrol rounds a bend and meets another patrol. At the point, two riflemen see each other. The first shot from each is rushed and misses. One man has an M1. His second shot arrives before his opponent has finished his bolt cycle. The fight doesn't end because of a legend or a slogan. It ends because one shooter kept the sight picture through recoil and could act on it instantly. When that exact pattern is carried by 5 men instead of 1, and then by 10 instead of 5, it becomes the feel of a whole formation. Numbers, doctrine, and the ground agree. Then, on a simple answer to our opening question, Outgunned is not only about how far a bullet flies or how hard it hits. It is about how quickly disciplined soldiers can put multiple, accurate rounds into a fleeting problem and do it again 30 seconds later and again 3 minutes after that, without their focus being consumed by the machinery in their hands. The M1 Garand gave American squads that speed as a standard feature, not a rare asset. The Arisaka, tough, reliable, and deadly in skilled hands, still demanded motions that, under fire, took time a man did not always have. Hold that thought as we step toward part 3. If seconds and sight pictures decide the first minute of a fight, how did Japan try to claw those seconds back? What happens when a nation, already under blockade and bombing, tries to copy a semi-automatic rifle at the edge of defeat? And beyond the war's end, how did this race for tempo shape the rifles that came next, from early post-war semi-autos to the select fire standard of the Cold War? Stay with us. The last act shows how ideas, not just metal, travel from trench to factory and into the hands of the next generation. Listen to the sound of a nation trying to make up time. Factories run at night. Engineers redraw a rifle from memory and from a few captured examples. Trains move by blackout rules. Ships slip out under a moon that is not always friendly. Every hour lost at sea or under a bombed rail bridge is another hour where a soldier at the front faces a rifle that fires faster than his. Here is our question for the final chapter. When ideas are right but time is gone, can a late answer change the fight, or do logistics and pressure decide before any new weapon reaches the line? The Japanese Type 99 tells us where the limits were. Early in the war, it looked surprisingly modern for a bolt action. It fired a 7.7mm cartridge with real punch. Many rifles left the factories with thoughtful touches. A chrome-lined bore that resisted rust in salt air and jungle. A dust cover to keep grit out of the action. Even folding lead bars on the rear sight meant to help a rifleman aim at aircraft. Some versions had a monopod to steady the rifle when firing from the prone. None of that was gimmickry. It was an attempt to wring every edge from a simple tool. But the core did not change. 5 rounds in an internal magazine, and a bolt you had to lift, pull, push, and lock between every shot. The Type 99 was strong and honest steel, but it could not cheat time. When the war turned hard and production had to speed up, the Polish went first. Late war rifles lost the extras, stock work got crude, and corners were cut to get weapons to the front. Reliability remained decent because the action itself was tough, yet the ceiling on rate of fire never moved. In the brutal minutes of a meeting engagement, that ceiling mattered more than clever sights or a shiny bore. By 1944, the gap in tempo was undeniable. Americans brought the M1 Garand by the hundreds of thousands. A whole squad's baseline was a rifle that could fire again without breaking aim. Japanese soldiers met them with courage, with light machine guns when they had them, with night infiltration and sudden shock. But most riflemen still worked a bolt. So the Navy's engineers tried a bold step, build a Japanese Garand. What they produced on paper was smart. The prototype, properly known as the Type 4 semi-automatic rifle, though it is often mislabeled Type 5 in English sources, kept the familiar 7.7 key 58mm cartridge. Instead of copying the American en-bloc clip, it used an integral 10-round magazine loaded from the top with 2 5-round stripper clips. That choice mattered. Japan already made strippers by the millions for its bolt actions, and changing feed systems in wartime is a headache. The action echoed the Garand's basic gas operation with local twists. Early experiments even tried to rechamber captured M1s for 7.7mm, but the feed system would not cooperate. A clean sheet copy was the only credible route. On a test bench, the idea worked. In the hands of an average rifleman, a 10-round self-loading 7.7 would have erased much of the American squad's time advantage. But a working prototype is not a fielded weapon. The problem was the calendar and the map. By the time the Type 4 was ready to prove itself, the Empire's arteries were closing. American submarines, aircraft, and mines were choking shipping lanes. Raw materials ran thin. Skilled labor and precision tools were pulled in too many directions. Factories were bombed, power flickered, transport stalled. The arsenal at Yokosuka could assemble dozens, perhaps a bit over 100 of these rifles. Enough to show a path, not enough to pave it. Units at the front did not receive them in any meaningful number. The rifle that might have given back seconds arrived when there were no longer enough hours to make it matter. This is the hard lesson. Ideas fight on the factory floor first. The United States made its decision early, fixed the M1's teething problems quickly, and then turned a good rifle into a common rifle. That required more than design. It took steel allocations, machine tools, trained workers, quality control, rail space, ship space, ammunition plants, spare parts, armorers, and schools that could teach a 19-year-old to respect a gas system and keep his rifle clean. It took the confidence to put a new, self-loading rifle in millions of hands and trust that the benefits would outweigh the learning curve. By late 1943 and through 1944-45, the result was visible in every theater, line units with the same fast, accurate baseline. Japan's answer shows the opposite pressure. Even brilliant engineers cannot build on nothing. Late in the war, the country had to simplify the Type 99 to keep up with losses. That was the right call for survival, but it moved the rifle backward in every way except speed of manufacture. Starting a brand new semi-automatic line under those conditions was like trying to sprint in water. You can move, but not far, and not fast enough to change the race. Pull the camera back beyond 1945. The M1 Garand did not fade with the armistice. It went to Korea and fought well in bitter cold, where a simple, robust semi-automatic showed its worth again. Through military aid programs, it armed allies in Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and Africa. It evolved into specialist versions with optics and improved barrels. And in the United States, the core idea, the quick follow-up, the solid stock, the peep sight, the gas-driven action, fed directly into the next step, a select-fire, magazine-fed rifle built on the same bones and chambered in a new NATO standard cartridge. That rifle became the M14, a bridge between the full-power battle rifles of the 1940s and the lighter, high-capacity rifles that defined the later Cold War. Other nations took their own paths to the same destination. Soviet designers fielded the SKS, a 10-round, semi-automatic carbine that loaded from the top and was easy to keep running in mud and snow. It was not a copy of the Garand, but it chased the same prize. More rounds, more control, faster follow-up for ordinary soldiers. Soon after, the Soviets embraced select fire with an intermediate cartridge. Western Europe leaned into detachable magazine battle rifles and, later, into lighter calibers as well. The shapes changed, the calibers changed, the doctrine adapted. But the logic that carried the M1 remained. If you want to win the first minute of a fight, give every rifleman the power to send accurate pairs without breaking aim. There is a temptation, in talking about weapons, to let the metal steal the whole story. We should resist that. A rifle is only one part of a system that includes training, leadership, logistics, and the stubborn will to keep moving under fire. Japanese infantry showed skill and bravery in every campaign. American units bled hard for every yard. The M1 did not win battles by itself. What it did, what semi-automatic as standard did, was give American squads a measurable, repeatable time advantage at the exact scale where most killing happens. The doorway, the trail bend, the shell scrape, the cave mouth. The Type 99, solid as it was, could not match that tempo. The Type 4, promising as it was, could not arrive in time to change the math. So when we say outgunned, we do not mean a myth about magic bullets or a single quote from a famous general. We mean something simpler and more useful. One side saved seconds, again and again, and spent them on control. Control of the sight picture, control of the second shot, control of the first minute, which so often shapes the next hour. Logistics made that possible. Logistics kept it possible. In war, that is the quiet difference between a clever idea and a real advantage. As we close this chapter, hold two images in mind. In the first, an engineer in a dim office traces the outline of a foreign rifle and imagines how to feed it with the tools he already has. In the second, a 19-year-old on a black sand slope presses the trigger, corrects, and presses again before the echo of the first shot is gone. The distance between those two images is measured in steel, coal, ships, training time, and the discipline of a nation under strain. That distance decided who owned the seconds. Next time on WW2 Chronicles, we follow the threads forward. How did the race for tempo lead two great families of rifles down different roads? One toward the SKS and the leap to select fire, the other toward the M14, and a last stand for full-power battle rifles. How did armies learn, sometimes painfully, where the balance should lie between power, control, and capacity? Join us for that story. It begins, as this one did, with a simple problem and a simple goal. Give the ordinary soldier a faster second shot, and with it, a better chance to come home.